Afternoon once again. We are here live from Toronto for the second of our series of webinars. Welcome to all of you. Very happy to have you present here with us today. Just going to activate the presentation here. Go. All right. Welcome. Very happy to have you for our second webinar of our series. I'm your host, Cheddi Suddith with SPB Organizational Psychology. The purpose of our webinar is essentially to follow up on trends, observations in the learning and development world, and the talent development world, predominantly focusing on observations that we gathered at the 2016 ATD conference in Denver, Colorado. I have the privilege today of acting as a host and having a guest with me, and I will wait no further for presenting our guest today, Patrick Duperré from Elecom.
Hi, Cheddi. It's a very pleasure for me to be here today with you guys. I entitled this webinar, Leadership Matrix and Lifelong Learning, Shaping the Leader of Tomorrow. I went to the ATD 2016, and I want to share with you my ideas and my vision about it. I think that will be a good opportunity for us to chat. I know you were there as well.
And for today, the format that we have with you is more of an interactive format. Patrick and I will be exchanging some ideas. We're hoping and we'll create some opportunities for you guys to give us some of your feedback. The best way to do that is to use the chat box on the bottom right corner of your screen. Lisa Plant, our colleague, is here with us, and she'll be capturing some of your questions, comments, and feedback at some specific times, and we will do our best to share those with you and respond to them.
So just quick few words about myself. I have 18 years of experience, mainly in developing learning strategy as an instructional designer, and also improving performance. My background is mainly a lot of theoretical field, but also practice. I work with many organizations in Canada. One of my forte is trend and innovation about micro-learning and also learning data. So feel free to ask any question about it. We can move on. I work also as a director of learning strategy for Elecom. Elecom mainly 15 years of business. We start in 2002, and we were developing custom learning solutions. And we progressively add some services with learning software as LMS and authoring tool. In 2012, we add a service called Learning Strategy Consulting. What we do so far is we help organizations to implement a learning solution into their workforce. We also have what we call off-the-shelf course catalog. And recently this year, we launched a model called Learning Maturity Model that's do an assessment of the business, a 360-degree assessment about the maturity of the business on learning aspect.
Great. For those of you who are not familiar with Elecom, you should look them up. They do great work in the online e-learning, micro-learning space. I know that here at SPB we partner with them and attempt to leverage that partnership as often as possible, us being in the world of leadership development as well. So great to have you here today.
Thank you, Cheddi. Yeah, so after a week in Denver, what I want to share with you today, basically, it's three main topics: leadership, but also I want to talk to you about Matrix. It's something that I saw a big learning path about Matrix with Jack Phillips in Denver, but also maybe a trend or not a buzzword, but lifelong learning. It's something that I think is very interesting regarding the demographic of the market. It's something that we see more and more into organizations as well. And I want to share with you some predictions about learning by networking, democratization of learning, and content, always content is king. We do know that organizations today have a lot of content. They want to deploy this content quick as possible. So I want to share that with you today.
And thank you for that, Patrick. I got really excited when I saw the content of your presentation because it's been an ongoing topic of its subject of interest and passion of mine in understanding how learning and talent development changes and evolves. And traditional models have viewed learning and development as an isolated incident that happens, traditionally in a classroom environment. Things have changed, and so and we saw it at ATD this year. So great to be able to address some of that today. So sorry for the interruption. I'm going to let you continue.
Yeah, it's a good point, right? We do know that the environment is evolving, technology changing, the way we learn, the life cycle or the time frame will become shorter and shorter. We now also have technology in the workplace changing a lot. We think about mobile devices, working remotely as well. It's something that's very interesting.
Yeah.
We live in a very, very interesting area.
Yes, absolutely.
So one of my first of all, the word leadership was everywhere in Denver. Organizations are now making leadership a priority to develop abilities of their internal team, their manager. I saw many companies offering content and coaching apps on leadership, and we both understand how leadership is crucial for many organizations. They all put in place leadership frameworks at every level of management. They also develop custom learning solutions, and they also leverage technology to create opportunity to share best practices. For me, that was not a shock, but I was very impressed about how many organizations or how many suppliers and providers were having a new otherwise content, otherwise approach, or even solution or tools. When I say apps, like apps they were managing as a performance level tool, sharing some tips on management and leadership. So I was very surprised about it. One of my big questions that I want to share with you is, what is the role of the individual compared to the leadership? What I mean by that is, for me, for sure, organizations are maybe the best person to put up in place a framework of leadership, but how that impacts the individual.
And so one question that I was curious about, if I may, is, and I'm sure you've attended multiple conferences before, do you feel that there was a little bit more of a focus on leadership and leadership content development through technology more so this year than in previous years? Or?
I went in 2014, and definitely leadership right now is something very present. Even not only in those kind of conferences, but also when you meet clients, it's kind of an issue that they bring on the table very often, and more and more.
And maybe can you elaborate a little bit on what you mean between is it what's the role of the individual or the individual's accountability versus leadership?
Yeah, well, the thing is, when we look at the kind of content that their providers are putting in place and they showcase in ATD so far, like they were stating, okay, this is our approach, our model, our framework. But at one point is, and what's really matter, and let's come back to what's really matter for an organization is how the individual creating impact and values in the business. For me, when you think about a leader, it's someone who shapes decisions and shapes behaviors. It's not only about, okay, I understand the framework or I understand the different pillar of the approach. You definitely need to be able to take action. And that's something I think is very important. And also another thing is, as an individual, you should be able to link those decisions and those actions into the strategy. So you make sure that the performance, the accountability, and the responsibility are there. So for me, it's not only about content, but it's also about developing this individual, coaching this individual to become a better leader. It's not about only understanding and knowledge, but mostly about developing skills.
Right. So going beyond leadership as a concept or as knowledge of what effective leadership is, but translating that into actual behaviors in the day-to-day operations of those deemed as, contributors and leaders within the organization, which to me, again, relates to one of my major passions, but also two, what we can bring to the table as organizational psychologists and as specialists in behavior. My biggest pet peeve is we need to develop leadership within the organization. We need to improve the quality of our leadership. And then, here are our values, here's our mission, here's our strategy, go do it.
It's not about only dissemination of information.
Right.
You need to actually do the job, take action.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what I was wondering when I saw all those providers saying, this is leadership, this is our model. How really impact the individual? How it really is effective on the individual.
Yeah. And so it stems from understanding the key behaviors, critical behaviors, and maximizing transfer. Yeah. That makes sense to you?
Yeah. And we do know that manager doesn't equal leader. I don't know if you agree with me, but sometimes some managers are not real leader, or a leader are not necessarily manager. For me, it's not having a position in the business, but you can be a leader even you're just a professional.
Yeah. A question for the audience, maybe. In your experience, how effective do you feel that training that you've experienced has been at rendering leadership development content, behavioral? We used to refer to it as rendering it operational, rendering it actual, concrete and specific. Would you rate it good or insufficient in terms of the training that you've seen, disseminated, or received? How concrete, how specific was it, and how impactful was it in actually changing behaviors? First question. For those of you who are interested, feel free to go to the chat box in the bottom right corner. Let us know your thoughts. We'll capture them as we begin to introduce the next section here.
Yeah, Sorry,
give it a.
The second thing that I note when I was attending to the ETD, basically, it's learning matrix. There were a big learning path. With Jack Phillips about ROI, but also measurement and what kind of matrix that we can get from our organization, and how can we measure the learning outcomes specifically. And we do know in our organization right now, there's a lot of systems that create data. We think about HR system, information technology, customer relationship management. So every organization has a bunch of data that's interesting, and generate an amount of it. So why organizations right now are looking to analyze this data, basically to make better decisions, but also to personalize and to adapt learning and priorities into this business.
The famous data trend continues.
Effectively.
And we'll just, for our audience, thank you for your responses to the first question. We will circle back to them at the end of the presentation, just so that we don't interrupt the flow too much. We'll ask you to respond, but in order to not pause for too long, we'll just circle back a little bit later and let you know what you guys told us.
Yeah, so for me, when we think about data, it's more about focusing on what really matters: people and result. And that's totally aligned with Jack Phillips' things. When we develop something, are we ensuring that we're getting the learning, the outcome or the business outcome that we are expecting? So do people are getting better? Do we have fewer mistakes? we have better performance. I want to share something that was shared during the ETG conference. Basically, it's mostly what shocked me. Some matrix that I know. First element was only 30% of the companies say that their learning strategy is effective and helping to achieve business goals, and only 8% say that they were very effective. So that scared me a little bit. So that means that a lot of learning initiatives are not totally aligned with the business strategy, or they don't expect to see results. The other statement was less than 10% of organizations have a formalized learning strategy that it's aligned with business goals. So
less than 10% have their learning strategy aligned with business goals.
Yeah. So basically,
what are the other 90% doing?
I don't know, but I don't know how they can justify their training budget.
Right. Not for long.
And that comes to me. That's the table that I'm sharing with you so far. As you can see, actually, as you can see, there's many measures that can be implemented into an organization. So we have the level 1 is the impact, level 2 is the efficiency, and they ask the question. The ROI Institute, led by Jack Phillips, they ask a survey to the CEO of Fortune 500 company, what at your C-level you're looking at when you look at some data or some information. What kind of information is very important for you when you think about training?
So what matters to our execs when they think training and development?
Yeah, so what they expecting to see on their dashboard.
Okay.
So basically, if you look at the table clearly, the C-level expect at 96% to see a level 6, so impact. So they want to see how the learning strategy impact their business.
That's where the biggest percentage is.
Yeah, that's what they want, right? And present, it's basically what they're doing right now. So only 8% are doing it. That's what the statement that I was showing to you before. So basically, CEO don't get from the L&D department what they want.
What's your take on why? Because I asked the question because we were having a roundtable not too long ago with some senior HR people around, how HR individuals need to establish the HR function as credible and how to do that within an organization. And certainly the use of this type of metric was considered as very important. And the question that remains is why?
I think it's a two-dimensional approach. Basically, people think it's very hard to measure. The second thing is L&D department are very, very conservative. They work with very low KPI, like how many hours have been done in the year and stuff like that. But they also, in their approach, they mainly design solution, and it's not 100%, but they mainly design solution based on content instead of what the learner needs to know, what the learner needs to perform on a performance basis. So basically, by having learning objectives that drive them to content instead of performance objectives, what my learner needs to achieve at the end. And if you want to do that, and if you start from the beginning and asking the why I'm doing it, and then you say, okay, I want to improve sales, I want to reduce mistake, I want to having a performance objective will lead you to a specific outcome in the business and how that will impact it. So basically, when we design learning solutions, it's not only about, okay, learning objective, but performance objective as well.
So beyond need to know to need to master to be successful.
Yeah, and for me, when I sit down with a client, I say, okay, you want a training on that, okay, what's broken, what you need to fix? And having this mindset, you see, okay, I need to improve myself, and I need to reduce turnaround time. I need to have a better output when you think about product line, and say, okay, how can we achieve that? And maybe training is only part of it, but at least your training will be aligned with the business outcome.
I'll share a bit that I also included in an article I wrote last year about, the effectiveness of training initiatives. And, as a facilitator, so often I walk into a client's mandate, they decided, hey, we want to offer training on, effective teamwork and collaboration, let's say. And as I poll participants when I arrive there, most of them don't even know why they're there. And the second question is that they rate themselves very highly on that skill. And so, you know, sometimes the perceived need from an immediate superior, unit manager, isn't sufficiently validated. And sometimes I've wondered as well, you know, is it just, hey, we have the budget, we need to spend our training dollars this year, what would be nice, what have we not done before, as opposed to what do my people need, and do they know that they need this? Okay.
And we both know, Cheddi, that sometimes people don't transfer knowledge because they don't know it. But the other factors, like organizational factors, motivational factors, that people don't transfer those kind of knowledge or those kind of skills in their workplace. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we need to understand that, okay, even we train them, they already know that. So the other factors come in place when they don't apply it.
Mm-hmm. Let me poll the audience again here, if I may. Here's a question for you. Let me rephrase this as more of a binary question. Do you feel that your organization or those that you work with, if you're more in the consulting space, is effective at leveraging data, meaning, you know, HR metrics, dashboard metrics, in order to drive the learning and development strategy? So yes or no, in your experience or in your own organization, do you feel that your company or the ones you've seen is effective at leveraging that data to drive the learning strategy? Again, using the chat box in the bottom corner, please send us your responses. We'll tally them and we'll get back to that a little bit later in the presentation.
And finally, the third topic that I saw in ATD was a concept not new to me, but I was very surprised to see. And I do understand where that comes from. It's mainly to keep the resources into the workplace. They want to avoid the turnaround time. It's about the lifelong learning. And it's become more and more, and organizations are becoming more and more interested in promoting lifelong learning, which refer to knowledge to translate immediate organization need, but also make sure that the learner has the opportunity to grow within the organization and pursue pursuing their knowledge and professional growth. For me, that speaks a lot to me. There's two things that I see so far in the market based on that. Part is this kind of approach, it's embedded into the strategy. So when I say it's embedded into the strategy, it's leadership and management create what we call corporate university. So they want to make sure that resources or people are part of the business, but they also can grow personally in it and professionally in it. And they also put into their strategy other initiatives. What I mean by other initiative is mostly active learning project. So they give the opportunity to resources to work on the project in the business and use the business case study to otherwise use it outside in continuing study or learning more about the business by doing specific project internally. That's very interesting. I see those kind of approach into senior management development. Mm-hmm. When we think about how can we foster innovation, so every senior manager have in their area or their operational expertise a specific project and how they can roll that out. Mm-hmm. And that was very interesting. Interesting. I also see impact on developing this kind of specific culture about sharing best practices. So we know that technology is very powerful. So some people to foster this kind of culture, they install a corporate Facebook so people can share, people can create content and post the content so they can share this kind of, okay, so this is what I did so far and it's worked this way. Otherwise on soft skills, but also on more like procedural solution. So I saw that often.
And the notion of lifelong learning and learning or acquiring knowledge, capabilities, aptitudes, behaviors that are outside of, what I need to do the job. That's a shift in mindset. What do you see as the factors that may either facilitate that or hinder the implementation of something like that? And I ask because it's a very purposeful question. We're preparing a presentation on just the implementation of a learning culture to present at HR Summit in November. And so I'm really curious your thoughts on that.
Can you just explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
So what I'm understanding is that, by lifelong learning, we mean continuous learning, and we mean learning on a wider range of or scope of topics than just this training on, SAP or SOPs. And I'm just wondering if organizations and leaders are ready to think beyond, hey, give my people what they need in order to deliver, and go to, I want people to grow and develop and learn, as individuals, as people, as human beings.
I think they don't have choice. If we look at different generation right now, people, they don't stick into one area. If we go a few years back, you were more like a specific operational manager or supply chain, and you know about this topic and knowing a lot. But somehow, right now, the new generation can have 2 or 3 careers. Mm-hmm. So having interest into and the opportunity within one organization to go through this kind of 2 or 3 career, I think it's really speaks to the new generation that's coming into the workplace market. Mm-hmm. For me, it's very relevant because we do know that when you have one sector, let's say you are in financial industry, and you give the opportunity to your person to go work a little bit at one project in marketing, one project in customer relationship, and you can move around into the same organization, but develop different skills, different interests that you have. I think it's really an added value when you look at resources, resources point of view.
Certainly, links very well to the idea of leveraging talents and leveraging knowledge, and the concept of diversity. That is the fundamental or the premise for, the concept of diversity in the workplace is that, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. The Gestalt approach, where you think, okay, so I've got all of these people with different strengths, talents, ways of doing, knowledge, experiences, expertise. And if we're able to leverage all of that together, we achieve greater results than if I were to just, sum them up or add them up. I think there's probably elements of culture. I believe there may be some organizations who are more ready, and I think this probably understates the huge role that leaders and leadership in the organization can have in promoting that type of culture. I think, for example, simply being curious about people's backgrounds and where they've been and what they've done. And if there's too much pressure to deliver my results, I may not have time to be interested in what Amanda on my team did in her previous job.
And what we can see so far as well, it's a less robust or formal hierarchy or org chart. We can see that some people, and if you look at the org chart of different organizations right now, it's coming more less level, but also more spread on a transversal, more wide spread. Like people, they have like no supervisor. They have like a floating chair somewhere, but they have kind of a support role. It's less top down, or more side by side, and that's how they deal with complexity.
Yeah. So less top-down dissemination of knowledge. Interesting.
And you create departments, and people move from the department to another department instead of going bottom up.
So that would suppose that I could be the mentor for someone that's on the same level as me in the org chart.
Yeah.
Interesting. Let me poll the audience one more time on that. One-word answers to, 1 to 2 word answers. What do you see as the most important criteria in an organization for fostering the learning culture, for developing our learning culture? Curious to hear your thoughts on that one. And that segues well into some of our next concepts. I can move on here.
Yeah. So right now we're jumping into prediction and trend. I want to share three predictions with you. Basically, one is networking learning, or learning by network. Also, democratization of learning, and content is king. Well, content. We do understand that organizations right now have a lot of content. They want to leverage it at low cost, and all those three trends are linked together. And you will see the segue between each topic. One of the first topics basically is learning by network. We do know today that the world is getting more and more complex. And if we go a few years back, when you don't have a question, when you have a question about, or you don't have the information about your job, well, you look at your supervisor on the top of you and say, can you tell me how to do it, right? But right now the complexity becomes so much that you cannot rely on your supervisor, because you do some specific tasks, and your role having, maybe you do the same, you're in the same position of someone, but you're at the task level, they're so diverse and so different than the other person at the same level as you, that you may not rely on your supervisor, but some people outside them. So you're looking at some opportunity and leveraging the social network to say, you know what, I need to develop or implement this solution. I cannot rely on my supervisor, but because what I do is so specific that I need to go outside the organization. I pull out some information, otherwise from community of practice, or other people are doing the same thing or did the implementation in other organization. So that kind of network comes to support you instead of finding the information into the hierarchy. And for me, this is something that we that we see so far. Basically, people who are having support group or community of practice that they're going to meet themselves face-to-face or virtually, or we have like e-learning community or learning community. It's very, very present right now.
Great. And I wonder, and this challenges our traditional model in competitive nature. And there is, I believe, much more of a trend towards cooperative and collaborative work.
And co-construction as well. So sometimes you do just part of the job, and someone add some value to it. And we saw that often, that we develop a model and someone get in and just add value, and you build something great.
Right. Yes, and it's more and more popular. There's websites. There's some people that are doing or developing exactly that sort of approach, where it's let's co-create. And it does. It challenges our traditional model of, well, I can't share this with somebody outside of my organization because they could be my competitor. It might get a leg up on me. So it's an interesting trend, and really curious to see how it evolves.
Yeah, and this trend leads to the second topic. That's mainly democratization of learning. Because when you look outside the organization, you may find some guru outside, and you say, this one have an understanding of this area or an expertise in this area that I can leverage, and they post freely some content there. They post freely some information that you can use and reuse. We look at Creative Commons copyright. So basically, when you look at Creative Commons copyright, it's models or content that are free. You just need to mention the source of it so you can use it and develop it and add value to it and modify it the way you want it. And that impacts a lot the cost of it. We think about leadership. There's many models in the leadership that are available on the market. So why should I pay to develop a custom one?
Right.
So for me, democratization of learning is something that is very, very present right now. And you do look at some, even with the open university, Coursera, you see some teacher or professor from many, many universities, they add their content there. But there's so many content available. So as a learner or like a person that have interest, there's so many existing content at different price, and there's still good content.
And this is, to me, this brings about a question: the world of music underwent the same thing when pirating sites and availability and access to free MP3s became so prevalent. What happens to a content developer or an expert? How do they make a living? How do they commercialize what they're developing if so much out there similar, equally as good, is free? Well, I don't know that we have an answer for that.
Well, the thing is, it's give us, for me, as I see it, when we think about content, instead of going to a publishing company or an editor company, now you have the choice to go on the open market. So that's opened the market to some expertise, some gurus, that's what I think. That's what I want to share with you guys. So for me, it's more open. Instead of going to a publisher and say, you know what, they are filtering the content. Basically, what you see so far, it's a bunch of content on the market or a bunch of content in the internet, but with some skills, you can find the proper quality content.
And that's going to segue well into our next section. But before we go into that next section, a question that came to my mind as we were discussing this earlier, and I was looking at some of the topics that you wanted to talk about, was what does that mean for a facilitator trainer these days? And one of the questions or reflections that I had was, should we be focusing more on developing learning agility as opposed to relaying content about how to, create or produce a widget? Maybe I should be teaching you how to go figure out how to produce that widget, and then so, it brings to mind for me the concept of learning agility, which is, how do I foster curiosity within individuals? How do I link that curiosity to organizational, team, divisional, organizational, departmental goals so that there's purpose in learning? How do I measure and develop their aptitude to learn? So, which again relates to that idea of learning agility. Certainly as a facilitator, it can be, and that's the idea of disruptive technology in the world and the evolving world of learning and development. It can be scary if you look at it from, this is challenging, the expertise and knowledge that I possess, and it can be incredibly invigorating and engaging to think that, now it's more about sharing than possessing knowledge.
And we see it in the organization as well, because right now, many learning and development department are heading into professional that work in this department responsibility, that is content creation. So now, as a learning professional, you need to be able to curate the content. So not only to design it and develop it, but you need to be able to find the proper content, assess the quality of it, and make sure that it can be available in the proper learning path of the people into the organization.
Great. So let's talk about that last trend then.
Yeah, and content is king. Yeah, the thing is, well, I do believe that content, if you think about information, organizations are producing massive information, massive PowerPoint, a lot of PDF, a lot of data, but not only data, but more like content data into every database system, email. So basically, when they invest into this kind of content, they want to make sure that they can leverage it. They want to leverage it not only to the specific purposes, but also make it alive, make it aware that, okay, this content is there. That's why we see so much the popularity of SharePoints right now. How can we tag this content, existing content, and how can we leverage it? How can we make it dynamically alive that people, if you want to use it, they know it's there? So
we do know right now that the issue is not about it's not about the information, but it's having access to this information.
Mm-hmm.
The information exists. We want to make sure that the learner and the people they want to use it are able to access it. So basically, as I see it, and I saw that at the ATD as well, more and more systems, more and more apps allow you to import your own content and add, let's say, an instructional layer on it. I saw a company called UMU, UMU. So basically what the apps do is you import your content, you add some instructional information about it, so learning objectives, and you cut it the proper information at a certain level, and then you can deploy it. So what it's doing so far is you import a PowerPoint and you say that PowerPoint pursues this kind of learning objective, and you add a little bit of layer, you add a question on it, and you can send it to your learner. So it's kind of reusing what's existing and making it part of the learning process.
And have they tied in, from what you've seen, have they tied in like a search engine, for example? So here's the topic of this content, or here's how this content is useful. I'm thinking about it in end user terms. If I go in there and want to learn about something, can I just type in the topic and that's what it pulls?
Yeah, basically what they're doing is you use the content, you use the PDF, the PowerPoint, stuff like that, and you create a learning sequence with it. Mm-hmm. So you leverage the information that's existing, and you, let's say, format it into an instructional way that's available for your learner. And that's what we will see so far, because we do know that creating content costs a lot. And we do know that this content is done once, so you want to leverage it. And the life cycle of content right now is very, very short. So you don't want to.
Yes. What's new today is old after lunch.
So you want to put a minimal investment on this content to make sure that it can be into an instructional format.
And so and one of the questions that I had was, if content is king, and you know, leveraging and accessing the information is certainly a challenge, and I feel like the real challenge is, how do I know what's useful and pertinent, because there's so much out there and so many mediums. There are apps, there's YouTube, there's browsers, there's podcasts, there's multiple other formats, but then how do I decipher relevance of content, or impactful? If content is king, and everybody today is a coach or an expert at something, and it's easy because you can create that and have direct access to your listener base, as opposed to having to go through, as you mentioned, publishers and whatnot as before. So what in your opinion makes a guru in something a guru, or content become more popular and raise to the top of the list on suggested videos on YouTube's? Or
and that's a good question. I do believe that quality of the content is key. I do believe also the structure of it, the way they design it, we can and the learner can see significant value to it. So I do believe it's mostly about the value of the content. And for sure, when we think about valuable content, there's some criteria that's aligned to that.
Right. What defines value? Well, it's
what's in it for me, for the work still applicable into this kind of content, right?
Yeah. Great. This has been fascinating, Patrick, and I do thank you for taking the time to share with us some of your, obviously, wealth of experience and knowledge, but also some of your findings from ATD. We did well with timing. It's 12:49 from what I can see here. I thought this might be a good opportunity to invite our listeners, as I'm going to circle back on some of the questions and polling that we've had throughout the session here today. I also invite you to insert your whatever questions or comments you may have about today's discussion approach in the chat box. So questions that you may have, or comments and feedback, more than welcome in the chat section on the bottom right-hand corner. Now, circling back to some of the questions that we polled you on today. The first one was, how effective have you seen organizations to be at rendering leadership training content concrete, behavioral, applicable? It seems to be split. The answers were good or insufficient, and we've got a 50-50 split on responses to that one.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So some do it well. Some apparently, aren't quite there yet. We can help you with that.
May that depend on certain level where you are in the organization?
Mm-hmm. It may well.
Sometimes the organization focus mainly on the top part of the C-level.
Certainly, I think it's key if learning and development departments or professionals are to maintain any type of credibility, they need to be able to change behaviors and deliver results. And in order to do that, if you don't know what those critical behaviors are and you don't define them and work on them and coach them beyond just saying, hey, this is what we expect, but support it in the environment, then you definitely will fall short. And so that kind of leads again to the transfer idea. The second polling question that we had was, do you feel that your organization or those that you've worked with is effective at leveraging data, HR metrics, dashboard metrics in order to drive the learning and development strategy? So few answers on that one, but the ones that we did receive are not really. That's not yet. And so, and again, that's been my observation as well with the whole big data trend, is that it's available, it's popular, we know we need to measure, and we are trying to measure, but life happens, and then sometimes we don't circle back and utilize that.
And I will state what Philip said. I do believe that people think it's more complex than it really is. And I share that opinion with him as well. Some approaches are very, very less time-consuming and very efficient. We think about critical mistake assessment.
Right. So give us examples of that while we're on.
Well, basically, when you want to link quickly a learning strategy to performance, you look at, okay, what people do wrong, what kind of mistake that I can focus on, and then when you identify those mistakes, you can say, this mistake cost me this amount of money. And the return on investment is pretty easy to make, right? If you solve this problem, you will save this amount of money many times. So when you do critical mistake assessment, it can be done by otherwise on qualitative data, let's say customer satisfaction. Can be also done some quantitative data, how many customers go through a point of sales, and you can definitely focus on one or two or the top 3 or 5 mistakes that people make and set up the proper learning outcome and the business impact as well. So for me, this is a simple thing that every learning solution should do and aim is, what do I fix? What kind of problem do I fix? And this problem worth how much?
Yeah, very easy in when you were thinking about sales environments, because they got so many metrics there, as you were mentioning earlier.
Yeah. But not also sales environment. When you look at some people, they are fill up a claim. So why how long it takes us to process this claim? What kind of mistake do we make when we process this claim? How many follow-ups do we do onto this claim? So because this leads to customer satisfaction. Right. So basically, it's not only about retail or money value, but also how people can see positively our organization when we process claims.
So it reminds me of an example that we used to use and still do at times in trying to highlight the importance of making quality hiring decisions. The cost of hiring from beginning of the process in your recruitment initiatives to the end of the process when the person's actually been hired and is sitting in the chair. And if you want to expand on that, go 1 to 2 to 3 months in to the job. If you make a mistake, you can easily, capture that data and the metrics. It requires a little bit of effort, but not that complicated to do, and will allow you to, qualify why, for example, we have a need in improving our recruiters' interviewing skills, for example, or ability to make quality hiring decisions as a learning and development need. The third question that we had was, what do you see as the most important criteria in organizations for fostering a learning culture? A couple of things came out from that one. The first one is give time to learn. Time, the age-old challenge of time. And I think that, I would agree. I mean, would you agree? Did you see that organizations actually do that?
My God. And when we think about learning solutions, I say to the organization or clients, can you afford to take people out of the business for a day or two of training? And we do know the reality is no. Nobody can pull out the workplace environment for learning and training. So that's why we should make tools available in their day-to-day life to create this kind of opportunity to learn on the job, learn while they are working, or having access to information. But yes, that's true. Time, learning is time, but I do believe it's a good investment as well. As a business perspective, it's a good investment.
Yeah, and in HR and learning and development professionals and experts need to be agile at selling the worthiness or the value of that investment. The second element in that, how do we create or foster a learning culture is support from management. What does that look like for you in your experience, if we were trying to render this even more specific?
I think that when we think about lifelong learning, it goes beyond the personal development plan that organizations are having, and you sit down with your manager only twice a year. For me, that doesn't make sense. How can you know the people you're working with if you just meet them twice a year? For me, it's all about communication. It's all about knowing the talent that you are working with, know the strength, and so far, know also the opportunity and the interests that are into the organization. So for me, it's more like a conversational approach, not only with your manager, but also other managers. If you can have this conversation with other managers and say, I think your project is very interesting. Maybe I can help.
Again, it's not that complicated. Support from management can be as simple as ongoing feedback and a simple phrase like, hey, what did you learn? Hey, that's really important. Hey, that's really interesting. And then that circle to the networking approach that I was saying to you. Hey, you have this expertise. How about you jump in with my project and you come to help me out? And that contributes to what we're calling about co-construction approach or collaborative approach. And I do believe that successful business will have this kind of vision as well. I don't want to oversimplify support from management because it can also mean I need to overcome my need to have this person here doing this and allow them to go learn something and have a conversation in another department and whatnot. So there's a mindset of this is essential for the person's growth and success, and what they will bring back is beyond, what they might be able to accomplish in the short term today here. So,
but it's also linked to the fact that what's really matters is people and results. Like how we get there, we can leverage the people we have.
We got one question from the audience, and maybe we can touch on this in closing here because we've only got a couple of minutes left. But based on your experience, how can we make employees more responsible to their self-development?
That's a good one. Basically, I do believe that it's not about they're not responsible of their own development. I think it's more about knowing what's available, the possibilities. It's more about when you have this culture of fostering learning culture in your business, people will know the opportunity that they have. Instead of looking elsewhere to develop themselves, they will say, okay, here, I know I have an opportunity here, I have an opportunity there. I talked to someone at the coffee machine and he said, I have interest in that one. How can I come to my manager and say, you know what, I thought I go work with these people for 2 months. And I think that this openness in the organization and the management level, it's key. I do believe that people are responsible, but if they're not aware of it, this kind of opportunity, I don't think that they will go up front or they will go right away talk to their manager. They need to know the opportunity.
Yeah. So they need to see the path a little bit.
Yeah.
And I fully agree with that. It's one challenge that we often see. Sorry, you.
And I don't think the manager they will say no. I think they're very open to it. It's just they don't know how to communicate this opportunity.
All right.
Because we do know that business go very fast, and sometimes you stick in the operation instead of.
Yeah, it's hard in this day and age where we're bombarded with information and where, you know, the rate and the speed of our clocks seems to have accelerated over the last decade, to really take some time to focus on individuals and their career paths. But I certainly think it's essential. One of the things that, you know, I would suggest in terms of developing employees or individuals with accountability for their own development is tell them. You know, one of the things that we do when we create development plans with individuals or when we coach them is, hey, you're in the driver's seat. This is yours to own. You will go as fast, as far, as wide as you choose to. So put them in the driver's seat and don't over-direct them, I would say. Focus on their career objectives and try to find the middle ground or the marriage between their career objectives and what you need from them or what you see from them as a path in the organization. But certainly I think that you need to provide that vision, help them understand where they can go and what you see for them as opportunities. And I would add, you know, focus on their curiosity. You know, ask them what they're interested in learning and developing. Ask them what they're curious about. Give them feedback so that their developmental needs need to be clearly understood, but they need to be heartfelt. It needs to resonate with them why this is important. It's either important to them, it's maybe important to their boss, and hopefully it makes it important to them, and they need to see it in the bigger picture. So paint the picture, tell them they're in the driver's seat, maybe lead by example.
Ask them contribution on special project.
Right. Involve
them. I think that's a big thing because I do believe that's how you stimulate interest at the beginning. You know?
Right. Exposure. Sometimes you don't know you're interested in something until you're exposed to it. So, thank you everyone for your patience. We are at the hour mark and we hope that this was engaging and as interesting for you as it is for us.